Welcome to the Trump Tyranny Tracker. It's day 214 of the Trump administration, but we're recapping the last 24 hours of the authoritarian creep of the Trump regime. Olga Lautman is the creator of the Trump Tyranny Tracker, and she's, of course, here with me. Hi, Olga. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. You know, it's I still a little nasally from whatever it is I had, but it's getting better. Look at all these great people coming in. It's so nice to see everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting the Trump Tyranny Tracker in particular. Olga puts into so much work into tracking how this regime is slowly creeping its authoritarian regime into force and taking away our democratic rights. And we've certainly had 24 hours where that has been on display in a big way. Perhaps we should begin, Olga, with talking about the Ukraine situation, because despite Trump's rhetoric about ending the war quickly, Moscow is not committing to a summit between Putin and Zelenskyy, with Foreign Minister Lavrov insisting talks must proceed step by step through lower-level experts first. Trump revealed he phoned Putin privately while hosting Zelenskyy and European leaders in Washington, calling it disrespectful to confront Putin in front of them. This undermines the diplomatic process. It's interesting that they view that as disrespectful, but they don't view what they did to Trump the Friday before as disrespectful.
Absolutely. And just a comment. Thank you, Mary. I'm still under the weather, getting there. Yeah, like I said it yesterday, I said it in January and in February. We're going nowhere. We're going in circles. And frankly, as a Ukrainian, I hate to curse, but I can't wait for Trump to fuck off and move on to the next thing, tariffs or whatever else he's moving on to, and then loop back around to us. But this is not going to go anywhere. I mean, look, Trump is sitting and, with his propaganda that, oh, look, I'm securing peace. First of all, if he was interested in securing peace, he would tell Russia to get out of Ukraine. They're the ones who invaded illegally. They're the ones who are committing genocide. They're the ones who have kidnapped over 21,000 children that we have documented. Russia claims that they have kidnapped more. One Russian official, Duma official, stated 700,000
Really?
that they took. Yeah. And then for them, they're not calling it kidnapping. For them, obviously, they have their own propaganda around it. But we're going in circles here. Russia is not going to meet with Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy, I mean, unfortunately, if he has to, he would meet with Putin, and we, see how he will do whatever it takes to protect Ukraine. No one is swapping land. Zelenskyy doesn't have the right to hand away land. These children aren't even in the discussion. I mean, finally, Friday, when was it? No, Monday. Sorry, Monday, when European leaders came. This is the first time that we've heard about Ukrainian children really discussed by Western officials. This is something that I worked on. We have been trying to get into mainstream media because, I mean, this in itself is genocide. You are not allowed to take children and displace them. And then you have to think about Trump talks about swapping land as if it's a business deal. That is genocide and war crimes. You cannot take Ukrainians living on Ukrainian land and say, okay, the 700 or a million of you, now you have to relocate. So, I mean, the whole thing is absurd, and, it drives me nuts because every time we loop around back to this cycle of, Trump focusing on Ukraine, you have the media creating a circus around it without actually discussing anything valuable. And you have everyone with their conspiracies and their insights and, their sources. We're not getting anywhere, and that's it.
Now, it does seem like Trump is trying to flex his muscle and finding out quite quickly that he has no muscle. That, he just does, no one's really paying attention to him. Putin obviously played him last Friday, and he got played, and he doesn't have any cards to play, ultimately, the American president at the moment.
I don't even know if Putin played him because, frankly, from January, it looks like Trump is attempting to assist Russia with everything he can to
Right, of
force a
course.
Ukrainian surrender. So I'm not so sure that Putin played him as that Trump is really trying to give parts of Ukraine to Russia. And we saw in February when he attempted and Ukrainians, refused to surrender, how angry he got and cut the intel sharing and military weapons that were there. Then he temporarily restored it. Then he tried to be nice and try to, a sweet talk Ukraine into surrender. That's not working because Ukrainians aren't going to surrender.
Yeah, of
I mean,
course.
this is just at the end of the day, no one wants to live under Russian occupation. This was the case under Soviet Union. People remember. Younger generations see what happened in Crimea and Donbass. So, I mean, no one wants to go back to living under torture, surveillance, a police state, disappearances, jailings, murders, and everything else. Thank you, but no thank you.
It's also interesting overnight that there was a direct Russian strike on American interests inside Ukraine. Russia struck a US-owned Flex electronics plant in Mukachevo, I'm not sure I'm saying it correctly, with 2 cruise missiles, wounding at least 15 and heavily damaging the facility. This is part of Russia's largest overnight barrages of late, with more than 570 drones and 40 missiles launched across Ukraine. They really are stepping up their efforts to try and claim as much land. But this attack on U.S. interests, that is unusual.
Well, that's a key, unusual part because, again, this is a signal to the United States and to the world that, here you have Russia knows exactly what they're striking. Trust me, every single
Of
night
course.
that they're striking apartment buildings and burying people under rubble. They know what they're striking. And, interestingly enough, they sent a message here, we're striking an American company. This is as Trump is floating his security guarantee. Oh, we're going to have Western businesses operating in Ukraine. First of all, what Western business is going to operate in Ukraine under missile and drone strikes? So,
Right. And he's certainly sending a missile that he doesn't want them there at all,
yeah.
which was, exactly what Trump was proposing. Um, Moving on to our second story, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced sanctions on 4 international criminal court officials, 2 judges and 2 prosecutors for pursuing cases against American and Israelis. The move, welcomed by Russia and Israel, but condemned by the ICC, the United Nations, France, and human rights groups, freezes any U.S. assets of the targeted officials. This is, this has no precedence in history here. We're actually freezing judges and prosecutors' assets of the ICC.
And I mean, for me, the main part is because Russian media was celebrating this move. Don't forget, Putin had the arrest warrant out by the ICC.
Yeah,
They were
exactly.
beyond ecstatic about this. So, I
And they're
mean, here
investigating
you
Bibi at the same time. So,
they're investigating Bibi. They're investigating war crimes in Gaza, and they have, arrest warrants on Belova and Putin. On top of investigations, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many thousands of investigations of war crimes and genocide that they have been documenting and working on since the full-scale invasion in 22. So, I mean, here you have America directly going after the International Criminal Court. And, the whole point is not as much even as the asset freezes as delegitimizing another institution, another Western institution that holds some kind of, lawlessness and war crimes and criminals accountable. And here you have the America who, is supposed to uh, promote human rights and condemn human rights abuses and war crimes and whatnot. Here we have them, targeting the people who actually do this work.
I read an account by one of the judges who talks about just not being able to even buy things online because the credit card couldn't work because of these sanctions. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a significant thing, but it actually is very impactful on these people's lives. These sanctions alerts show up every time they do a transaction in any bank, including mortgages or anything like that. It'll show up as a sanction alert. So it's not nothing that these are
Yeah,
against your
no,
personal lives. Yeah.
absolutely.
Our fourth story today, Vice President J.D. Vance praised Trump's federal takeover of Washington's police, calling it a blueprint for other U.S. cities. Yesterday, alongside Stephen Miller and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he touted the deployment of National Guard troops and federal agents, even as most D.C. residents oppose the move and protests continue. This is turning out to be an interesting thing that these guys went out there and were heckled by a lot of people. But the actual expansion of DC forces or National Guard forces in DC is growing and isn't being met with so much resistance by the actual mayor and the police force in the city.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when we started this, Tracker Live. I mean, we warned about a police state in the United States. Anyone who's, who can remember what it's like in authoritarian regimes and who sees what happens, saw the red flags that we are walking into a surveillance and a police state. Sure enough, this is what's happening. And the fact that they're using the nation's capital, this is a symbolism of democracy and freedom around the world that right now looks like something outside of in Afghanistan or in Iraq. And the fact we have these many, how you call it, military officials roaming DC. This is
Mm.
being televised across the world, so we're legitimizing, other police states. At the same time, I've read accounts that you have people coming off of the subway stations and being pulled over and asked for papers. Where do we remember, well, having our papers checked? Not us
Yeah.
personally, but
Apartheid South Africa is the last time I remember encountering that.
yeah. And same
So,
thing with Hitler. I mean,
mm.
the Nazis did the same thing, you know. So I mean, this whole thing is disgusting, and really, I pray that Americans wake up to this because once you cross into this dark territory, it's very, very hard to pull back. And
And
I
this is,
mean,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, just quickly to wrap up, DC is a test case. I mean, we saw this happen in LA against protest. I mean, protests are the cornerstone of American democracy against protesters, and now we're seeing it in DC. And this is going to be like a cancer that sweeps across all of America.
And everyone needs to remember that these are sanctuary cities that they're going after, essentially. The reason they're going after all these cities is they're deemed to be sanctuary cities. And what they want ICE to be able to do is access as many people as they need to in terms of reaching their targets for deportations. Last week, they sent, or I think on the 13th, they sent a letter to all the officials in each of these cities and states warning them that they could face actual criminal prosecution if they don't follow these instructions to allow, the National Guard and other forces into these cities. So we're talking about elected public officials facing criminal prosecution for these kinds of resistance against these forces coming in.
Welcome to Russia.
Yeah,
That's all I could say.
there you go. Finally today, Tulsi Gabbard, uh,
Oh,
the
we have
ODNI
actually
chief.
two more. Two
Oh,
more
is it?
stories.
Oh, okay. Well, I got something wrong then. Maybe I missed something. Anyhow, Tulsi Gabbard announced a sweeping reorganization, eliminating the National Intelligence University and shrinking the Foreign Malign Influence Center, which tracks foreign election interference. She framed the cuts as an effort to crush the deep state and slash $700 million while also revoking security clearances and for dozens of national security officials tied to Russia and election analysis. This dismantles America's defenses against foreign elections interference, obviously, but it's also such a terrible excuse to be using this as a crushing of the deep state.
Absolutely. And, again, with this tracker, the reason that I do this tracker is to look for patterns. I think it was like the beginning of February, they started taking different, foreign election interference task force within the Department of Justice, within CISA. And here we have now the DNI doing this. I mean, this is incredible. And frankly, this they are doing everything to leave America defenseless. And, it's basically they're welcoming election interference, you know, hoping that it will benefit them. Because in prior elections, Russia, has interfered and attacked U.S. elections to help Trump and the Republican Party. We'll see what happens, going forward. We will see what China's known for attacking U.S. elections. Iran is known for attacking U.S. elections. So I'm not sure how much they want to welcome U.S. foreign interference into U.S. elections, but the fact that they're dismantling everything to prevent this, I mean, it's honestly reprehensible.
While at the same time accusing people of being involved in these, attempts to stop Russia's interference in 2015 and 2016, it's kind of remarkable that they're doing both at the same time. It's so much gall. I don't have another story on my list
Oh.
here. Is there another story?
So the other story is the Federal Reserve Chair and Lisa Cook, and the fact that now they are investigating her for mortgage fraud. Mortgage fraud, to me, honestly, this is now who we have: Letitia James, we have Adam Schiff. This is like the
Euphemism.
corruption. Yeah, in Russia, it's every time they need to remove officials or jail someone, they always find 1990s crimes, corruption or some kind of crime. This is the Russian version of mortgage fraud they're using. And now the Department of Justice is opening an investigation into this, quote unquote mortgage fraud, and we see them weaponizing agencies to go after anyone Trump, who stands in Trump's path, using sham investigations, using our tax-paying, payer funded agencies. I mean, we pay for these agencies that are being weaponized. And that's it. And as far as I just mentioned, Letitia James, I mean, they actually sent Ed Martin. You remember that lunatic?
Yeah, of course.
They sent him in front of her home in New York. I believe it was in New York. They send him and a few other investigators in front of her home, and they were pictured outside. I mean, this thing is honestly disgusting, and this is exactly what happens in Russia. Anyone who crosses the Kremlin or any of their cronies or stands in the way of something, they end up being under investigation, prosecuted, or falling out a window. We haven't gone to the window stage yet.
Of course, that huge penalty that Letitia James got against Trump was thrown out today by a federal judge, that $500 million penalty that he had to pay. Although they did say that the underlying evidence was valid. But, this comes, amidst all this abuse of her by these fraud charges. I mean, it's very difficult for anyone to operate knowing that at any point the Trump administration could launch these investigations into what might have been a purchase of a home, how many years ago. It's really it's an awful use of these departments to target officials
that we're paying for.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the final thing. We're paying for it. And today's case was thrown out, but again, it was on the underlying case. They didn't make a comment. It was just that they felt that the penalty was too high. This is going to continue through the court systems. I'm sure they'll find, just a more moderate penalty. I'm hoping, because if this gets, is allowed to get away, then we have another problem. But I'm hoping that, it's just that they thought $500,000 was too high of a penalty.
Well, that is the Trump Tyranny Tracker for today. Olga Lautman is at trumptyrannytracker.substack.com. It's where you can get the daily accounting for what this regime is doing in terms of authoritarian creep. She keeps it meticulously updated, and you have to subscribe to it so you keep up to date.
I am behind. I am catching up. I'm so sorry. I am sick. I am working very hard to catch up. I will be fully up to date by this weekend.
But it is meticulous, nevertheless.
Normally it's up to date, yes.
And you can also find her at Unmasking Russia, which is her other Substack. And there she's got a great series currently with Julie Roginski, looking back at the 2016 interference campaign that Russia launched against the American democracy. At narrative.org, NARATIV.org is where you'll find my stuff. And I am just advertising these days my Greatest Heist series. We're at chapter 7, where we look at exactly how Donald Trump was cultivated by the Russians throughout the 80s to become an asset, which he remains to this day. And that is the Trump Tyranny Tracker. I'll be back in 40 minutes with Dean Blundell for the 5-stack. I'll see you then, and we'll see you tomorrow, Olga.
Yes. And thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.